Blizzard with Diablo 4's marketing, they are going all out. And it's interesting because something like this is actually like unacceptable in their own games, you know, because just about a year or two ago, they went on a full censorship tour in which anything like that was pretty much removed from all of their games. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Apple is just one of the only companies that I feel could get away with this, selling a $3,500 snorkeling mask. I mean, that's what it looks like, and I immediately did think that this was dead on arrival, but a lot of people reminded me this is Apple. It just seems like everything they do, it sells, no matter what, no matter the quality. At this event, we also saw Hideo Kojima make a surprise appearance because he just shows up at any and all events, period. We're going to be getting Death Stranding on Mac, so that's cool, I guess. But for the next week or two, we have a ton of actual gaming events that will be happening. We have Not E3, Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, which by the time you're watching this video may or may not have already happened, but there's tons of announcements being teased for that. Obviously, Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty's expansion will be shown and probably get a release date for that. That's something I'm personally looking forward to, and hopefully some surprises, maybe even some from Sony, who right now could use a victory or two after their disappointing PlayStation showcase, which we'll touch on a little bit later on in this video. But Xbox has also been talking about their own showcase, which will be happening later in the week on Sunday. And right now, Xbox is saying everything an Xbox fan wants to hear. They're not tempering any expectations, which is a bit surprising considering the last couple of years of disappointment that we've had with this console maker. Starfield will wet your pants, says Aaron Greenberg, and he said that the Xbox showcase will be featuring no CGI trailers from their first-party studios, which is music to my ears. I don't care for CGI. You guys know my feelings on this. I've voiced it so many times over the years. I don't care if it shows the vision or whatever. I actually want to see gameplay. I want to see what the actual game looks. That's what I feel like all these presentations should have. And hearing that we're going to be seeing that, hopefully we'll see some avowed gameplay, Fable, and maybe even some big surprises. Maybe even an announcement for Wolfenstein 3. I'd love to see that. And maybe even an Exile Entertainment's next game. There's a lot of stuff that Xbox has been cooking. They have a lot of stuff in their pipeline. We have not seen the results yet for them, but I still am hopeful that we eventually start seeing them, you know, push forward some Game of the Year contenders. Hopefully that is something that is coming. Now, EA Sports has preparing for their future without FIFA, and they're also preparing for NFTs because, yeah, that's something that will not die. Right now, EA Sports is teaming up with Nike's .swoosh NFTs, and EA is right now going into full damage control, saying that they're not adding anything, they're just looking into it, which AKA is their way of saying that they're going to do it as long as it's something that is going to make them tons of money, and it probably will. But yeah, NFTs in games and in general is not something that's going any bit away. Now, on the EA front, there has been some big news because BioWare is pushing forward on their main franchises, which is Mass Effect and Dragon Age. But it does look like modern day BioWare is saying goodbye to Star Wars: The Old Republic, putting it in the rearview mirror. Broadsword Online Games and EA have signed a letter of an intent, according to IGN. The agreement could see the Old Republic handed over to current Ultima Online and Dark Age of Camelot developer Broadsword Online, which is run by former Mythic Entertainment co-founder and BioWare VP Rob Denton. It had been said that 70 to 80 developers were working on this, and that's just surprising to me in 2023 because you really haven't heard anything about this game in so long, but they had a ton of developers still working on this, and now they're moving on. Now, in the Star Wars front, there has been some news on the KOTOR remake once again. Right now, it has not looked good. It seems like there's been an indication from insiders that this may never see the light of day. And to further emphasize that point, we had an update from the publisher. Embracer Group was asked about this, and they had a no comment, which is definitely not encouraging news to those who want to see KOTOR come back. But if you are looking for any signs of hope with this project, there is some, in which on a recent Embracer Group report, as of May 24th, 2023, the project is still in active development, although it does appear that it could be years until we hear anything of substance or even see anything. Now, Square Enix is preparing for what should be a massive release with Final Fantasy XVI, but right now they are reportedly freaking out over the pre-orders for this. And while some have really gone to the extent of saying that this is why they should have released this on Xbox, it is worth mentioning that God of War 2018 had experienced something similar to this, but I don't think that this is as big of a deal as some are making it out to be. I think if it comes out to great reviews and such, I think it's going to result in great sales. Alan Wake, this was one of the big announcements of the PlayStation Showcase, in which we got a new trailer, we got a release date, and then we got something that took a lot of us by surprise, and that was the announcement that it will only be getting a digital-only release, which is just terrible in my opinion. I hate this mentality within this industry. You see so many companies, not necessarily in gaming, but you see censorship of older media, you see servers being brought offline, you see single player games being forced with an online only element, and it just makes me worried for entertainment in general, in which there's tons of media that we won't be able to see in its original vision because of moderate audiences and all that nonsense these publishers use. And then in the gaming space, a lot of these publishers use these excuses for digital only releases to, sell these games later on with remakes and remasters, and it's a lot easier to do that when people don't have physical copies of these games. But with Alan Wake 2, the explanation we did get from developer Remedy Entertainment was largely on cost. They said a lot of people are playing digital now, so the move isn't exactly that uncommon. They say that this brings down the price point so they don't have to charge extra for it, and they also say that they don't want to ship a disc product and just have a download code for it, which is again another thing that I've really started to hate, seeing so many companies do that. So it is nice that we're getting some transparency here, but it was nice to see that THQ Nordic actually jumped in, because there was a lot of uproar about this, and they said that maybe we could just release it for you. I hope that this is something that they do explore, THQ Nordic, with Remedy. Maybe that's something that they can, actually work out. They said in a tweet, "We did the disc version of Alan Wake for PC back in the day, and just because one person does not love physical, there is plenty who still do. Give it some thought." And that is something that I definitely hope that they actually embrace. Now, The Last of Us was one of those surprise omissions from the recent PlayStation showcase. A lot of people have been wondering what the heck is going on with this project, and we got a recent update from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, which sheds light on that, and it looks like things are not going well with yet another Sony live service. Surprise, surprise. As Jason Schreier reports, Sony has slowed down development on this multiplayer game. The team working on it has scaled back after a recent evaluation. Now, who conducted this evaluation is very interesting. It was Bungie, the developers behind Destiny, and one of Sony's recent acquisitions. It makes perfect sense. Destiny is a game still played by millions upon millions of players, massively huge successful live service, and Sony really doesn't have any of these big successful live services, so looking to them for their input makes sense. And they did evaluate the Last of Us multiplayer project, and they were concerned with the ability to keep players engaged for a long period of time, which led to the reassessment, the scope being changed, and the project being scaled back, which we'll see if it ever sees the light of day, this project. But I kind of miss the days in which a multiplayer project could just drop and it didn't have to have these goals of keeping people engaged for years upon years. But that's just, I guess, the nature of the evolution of this industry. As many have brought up, this was initially envisioned as just an add-on to The Last of Us Part 2, but the scope grew. It was announced in September of 2019 as a standalone project, and then we got concept art in the middle of 2022, and then we got more concept art at the beginning of this year, and then a delay announcement here in May of 2023. We'll see if it ever sees the light of day. Naughty Dog did provide a statement about this situation, this in-depth report, pretty much saying that the team's continuing to work on the project. They're going to try to make it as great as possible. They have a brand new single-player experience in development. We all know it's The Last of Us Part 3. Not a shocker. We'll see that announcement eventually, but you can add this to my statement collection. I swear it just keeps on growing every single day. It's becoming more frequent, which is kind of concerning, but it kind of looks beautiful just looking at this. Forspoken, Jedi Survivor, Cyberpunk, Fallout 76, Redfall, Overwatch 2. Man, oh man, this is the AAA games industry. Perfectly encapsulates the problems that we as gamers have with these companies. We have responses to in-depth investigations, apologies for broken launches, cancellation of features, damage control over greedy decisions, and it seems like these statements just are not slowing down at all, and it's just going to continue to happen, and it looks like my collection will only continue to grow, which is very sad and unfortunate, but that's gaming here in 2023, I guess. Into our next story, we actually are touching on one of the recent additions to my collection, and that obviously is Lord of the Rings Gollum. Oh gosh, I don't know what's been happening with Lord of the Rings in general the last couple of years. Since Christopher Tolkien died, the estate has made some very mind-boggling decisions, which don't exactly inspire hope for the future, especially because I'm sure we're going to be getting eventually a Netflix Gandalf series. You just know it's going to happen, but recently we had Magic the Gathering giving some updates updates to beloved characters, and all I'm going to say is I feel like these companies do stuff like this on purpose. Aragorn is no longer what he looks like, what he's written like in the books. He got a modern audience update. That's the best way I can put it. I feel like these companies are just baiting audiences to get people upset, and it's worked. But then obviously we have Gollum. Gollum is what everybody's been talking about, mocking and making fun of. It's just so bad. I never thought that this was actually going to be something that was worthwhile. It looked like maybe it could be competent at the very least, but it wasn't. A 35 out of 100 on Metacritic, very likely the worst game of 2023. If you or anybody you know spent money on this product, I feel so sorry for you, but fortunately on Steam it obviously has a mostly negative reception. It also only has 280 reviews, so hopefully not many people are buying this. And even the positive reviews are actually just mocking the game, which is kind of funny, but that's what everybody's been doing about Gollum. I feel kind of like some people are just going to buy it because of how bad it is, but I do think that the developer released this just with the hope that the franchise would sell itself, but yeah, that didn't work at all, and thankfully it didn't, because this game is completely unacceptable. From the broken state of it, the horrible gameplay, the terrible graphics, this is an absolute travesty, something that the Tolkien state should be, they should find this blasphemous, but I highly doubt that they even care at all. Now, unfortunately, though, it does look like we probably have some more Gollums on the way. Gollum 2 approaches, unfortunately. Probably not Gollum. But yeah, the developers behind this, Daedalic Entertainment, they are working on another Lord of the Rings game. This was announced by the publisher behind it. This is the first of several games based on the Lord of the Rings license being developed by this developer. There's a follow-up project in the works, it was claimed, that's codenamed It's Magic, which will emerge in 2024 as yet another expansion of the Tolkien universe. Oh my gosh, yes, lots more like this are on the way. Maybe Legolas is next. Oh boy. But as the developers prepare for future Lord of the Rings content, we did of course get this apology statement, and all you need to know is that they called the IP the Lord of Ring Gollum. Oh my god, I can't take these people seriously. They put as much effort into this statement as they put into the game, and anybody associated with this should just be completely embarrassed. Xbox and Bethesda had high hopes for Redfall. This was a game that had a decent amount of anticipation behind it, largely because of the history with Arcane, the developers behind Dishonored, Prey, award-winning experiences, and they were working on something a little different, but there was an expectation that this was going to be a decent experience, and even the previews that came about in March kind of gave us that window. We expected it to be decent. Redfall is a monster-filled sandbox with big immersive sim potential, says Polygon in March. That was a little bit of a snapshot that we saw from a lot of reviewers, which made a lot of people believe that this would be the perfect game to play. It wasn't going to be like a 10 out of 10, but a decent experience to play until Starfield comes later in the year. Unfortunately, we all know now that that wasn't the case. Redfall turned out to be one of the worst games of 2023. I can't say the worst, because unfortunately that's reserved for Gollum, which came out soon afterwards, but Redfall, we've heard from Xbox that they're going to continue to build on it and improve it, and they also said that they didn't expect the reception to be so negatively received, as they did, I guess, some mock reviews, and I'm assuming they thought in the 70s or 80s, but if you've played Redfall, I just don't know how anybody could come to that conclusion. But right now, Redfall it's MIA from the most played games, and it's only been out for about a month, and a game that came out even beforehand, that would be Star Wars Jedi Survivor, is like only in the 21st place. But Redfall, nowhere to be found, because nobody's playing Redfall anymore. Everybody has moved on, which maybe Arcane should do the same. On Steam, it's the same story. 44 players right now. This is going to be a game that nobody's playing in a couple of months. This was a major misfire. And that's why we did get this recent report from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, which has everything that you would expect with a game that, well, it ended up being a disaster, and the development ended up being disastrous. Very similar to the games like Fallout 76, Cyberpunk 2077, Anthem, and the list goes on and on and on. But Schreier reported on things that we see with all of those games. The makers of Redfall, the mediocre reception was no big surprise. It was a surprise to Phil Spencer, but not to the developers that are actually on the ground level. The project suffered from unclear direction, frequent attrition, and a perennial lack of staff, according to more than a dozen people who worked on it. Development on Redfall began in 2018. At the time, ZeniMax, the large privately held owner of Bethesda, was looking to sell itself. Behind the scenes, the company was encouraging its studios to make games that generate resources beyond the initial sales, games as a service, and they wanted microtransactions. One big thing I think a lot of people don't understand about Bethesda is that they had a major private equity firm that owned a lot of the company. I think that company like owned a major share around 2016. That's why we saw Bethesda shift from save single player games to, oh no, here's Wolfenstein Youngblood, here's Fallout 76, and Redfall's in development. All these multiplayer live service games coming from mostly known, beloved single-player developers, and obviously it worked out as I think a lot of us initially expected it to be. It ended up being a mess. But as it continues, Bloomberg reports that staff members said that over time they grew frustrated with management's frequently shifting references to other games, such as Far Cry and Borderlands, that left each department with varying ideas of what exactly they were making. Throughout the development, the fundamental tension between single-player and multiplayer design remained unresolved. And then morale at Arcane suffered, just like all of these studios. Veteran workers who were not interested in developing a multiplayer game left in droves. By the end of Redfall's development, roughly 70% of the Austin studio who had worked on Prey would no longer be at the company. I think a lot of people don't understand that these companies, these beloved studios, whether that be Naughty Dog, CD Projekt Red, Arcane, they're not monoliths. It's the people that make up these studios that make these games. Like the Arcane studio that made Prey, they're no longer. Even the CD Projekt Red studio that made The Witcher 3 is no longer. I think I did an in-depth investigation months ago. About 50 to 70% of that studio is gone. I think about like 16 out of the 24 lead developers are gone with that, just with that company alone. BioWare, it's the same story. So when we talk about these companies like CD Projekt Red, that's not going to be the same studio making The Witcher 4. Arcane, it's not going to be the same studio if they end up making Prey 2. These companies, the burnout, the issues, the development trouble, all of it leads to people leaving in droves, and these companies are never able to recover because they aren't the same. But as Schreier continues, Microsoft purchased ZeniMax, and the hope was that Arcane, the people that are again on the ground level, was that the game would be canceled, or better yet, that they would be able to reboot it as a single-player game. And man, if only they could have had that happen. Along the way, one of the lead developers, Harvey Smith, and other leaders assured staff that the game would get exponentially better once the final art was implemented and the bugs were fixed, promising that Arcane magic, BioWare magic, again, it would manifest at the last minute as it had with previous games. Harvey Smith recently said in an interview with the website Eurogamer that early on he pushed back against the compulsory inclusion of an in-game store. For the first 3 years, Redfall had a significant microtransaction plan in place. Again, that's the only reason why this game was made. It was to generate profits, make tons of money, but obviously that all changed once the company was sold, and this is when Microsoft really should have jumped in, and their hands-off approach unfortunately led to this mess, and now we will wait to see what's next for Arcane. Maybe it's another Dishonored game, maybe it's Prey 2, but regardless, this company will never be the same, and we unfortunately will never get that proper Prey 2 that a lot of us wanted to see from them. The recent PlayStation showcase was a massive disappointment. It was an event that a lot of people expected it to set the stage for the PlayStation 5, and it really didn't do that. We haven't had a showcase since I think it was towards the end of 2021, in which we saw Wolverine announced, Spider-Man 2, obviously a big showcase for God of War Ragnarok, and since then we've had some state of plays, but that's what this was. It was a state of play. We did see some big announcements, such as Metal Gear Solid 3, the remake. That's interesting, at least to me. We'll see what that looks like from Konami. Alan Wake 2 got some more footage and an actual release date. Marathon was announced by Bungie, although some of the other stuff that's come about it, a little less excited for it, but still nice to see an old IP revived. We saw a couple of Sony live services, one coming from Jade Raymond's new studio, no actual footage, just a CGI trailer, and you guys know my feelings on CGI trailers. I just absolutely despise it. We saw a Splatoon ripoff from Square Enix, a couple of other multi-platform games, and Phantom Blade Zero, which actually looks pretty good, but it was nowhere near what everybody expected from it. But one big thing we did see was Spider-Man 2, and the reactions to this reveal have been it reminds me of the whole Puddlegate that we went through a couple of years ago, that ridiculous saga that went on for a while until the game actually released. But Spider-Man 2 looks fine. I think the gameplay looks very interesting. Venom looks like it's going to be a major player with this. We see Kraven. It looks like it's going to be a major PlayStation release. But some of the reactions have been kind of wild, kind of surprising. On social media, we've had stuff like this. No wonder why Spider-Man 2's gameplay looks so underwhelming. Maybe if Insomniac did crunch. Yeah, this actually got this individual blocked by Insomniac in just saying that the game looks bad and the developers need to overwork themselves. I just find that ridiculous. And that's because I believe on their last game, or one of their recent games, Ratchet and Clank, they said that they didn't have to crunch on it. I do think people need to understand overworking yourself isn't good for the health of this industry, but yeah, the Spider-Man 2 gameplay looked fine, and obviously it's going to look much better once it comes out, maybe later this year. We saw another reaction in which people are just comparing the CGI trailer, which we got, I believe, back in 2021 versus the gameplay, and again, I don't really see how you can compare the two, and I think that this gameplay actually looks pretty fun, especially with those Venom abilities. We saw another one comparing shots and saying that it looks crappy, but again, this is from, I believe, compressed video from whatever YouTube video that it came from. This isn't giving the full vision of what the actual game looks like, and it's bad faith arguments, and some of these accounts are known for that. So another one in which this one actually, I'm not going to get into it because we've talked about this to death, and I even talked about it on Twitter, and people go back and forth. But I still do not like the new Spider-Man look. I will forever not be on Insomniac's side with their argument that they just wanted to change it because of the bone structure of the face. Yeah, I don't believe that at all. I think it's more likely that there was some sort of dispute with the actual model, whoever did it, but yeah, there's more to that story. And then, again, more bad faith arguments from these people. But I did see one interesting argument in which a lot of people have been carrying on, and it's the same individual, same developer who commented on God of War Ragnarok calling it DLC. And yes, it is David Jaffe, who was a director on one of the original God of Wars, or a couple of them.
Here, but it looks like more of the same, though. And at first I was pretty excited watching this trailer, and then as it went on, it just started to feel very been there, done that. And this had me excited at first, and then, it just kind of dragged on, and it started to look like just another one of those kind of games that a lot of people love, but I'm kind of bored of, the kind of Sony cinematic, cutscene heavy, quick time event heavy. It feels just, the trailer makes the game feel very safe and very been there, done that. But it's Spider-Man, it's Insomniac, it's probably going to make a bucket load of ducats. So I'm interested. I'm here to play it. I'm here for it. I'm here to love it. I see no reason I won't. But it is a little disappointing that, I don't know. You just want a little bit more, you want a little more pop, a little more juice, baby. It's kind of generic.
There were animations that I've seen, in Miles Morales and in Spider-Man 1. Now, I don't know if, they did this on purpose and they didn't want to show the new web swinging animations, given that they showed so much. But that was something that stuck out, and it kind of devalued the gameplay a little bit for some people, including myself, because okay, I've seen this before. You guys haven't updated.
And that is another YouTuber who shared that opinion as well, but this is the argument some people say, that it just looks too samey, and I feel that's weird, especially after, we just saw a game like that, and it's probably going to win Game of the Year, that being, obviously, Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda, and even God of War Ragnarok. We had the same arguments being made, and that ended up winning a bunch of awards. Ultimately, a lot of the criticism that I am seeing right now, it just feels like it's being done in bad faith. I can understand some of the arguments like Jaffe's with saying it's disappointing, but others saying that it's a downgrade, saying the animations aren't different enough. I mean, the formula was perfected by Insomniac around 2017, whenever the first game released, and they've only improved upon it, and this one's going to be massive. We're going to be getting Brooklyn and Queens added on, and even from what we saw within that footage, you can see clear improvements in the technology, the gameplay, the graphics, the abilities. Looks like Spider-Man 2 is going to be a worthy sequel, and there's a lot of reason to be excited for it, at least in my eyes. Activision Blizzard probably is one of the worst companies within this AAA games industry. I'd probably say the worst. They've overtaken Electronic Arts, especially with their horrendous culture. Bobby Kotick actually recently denied any allegations that they have a systemic issue with that. All the cover-ups, everything that he himself took part in. He's denying all of that being a systemic problem that happened under his leadership, and that's not really that surprising, but Bobby Kotick does a very good job at making people hate him. And this also comes immediately afterwards. There was a report that showed that 29 incidents happens, and they actually received 114 reports of all of this that happened that employees reported throughout 2022. This is a company that has horrendous management, and it needs a major shakeup. I still don't know if that's going to happen with Microsoft. There's still fighting with regulators to get that deal through. We'll see if it happens, but their hands-off approach with Redfall has had me worried, and there's been reports of other studios under them with chaos, such as Undead Labs. Microsoft's has some major problems under them, and I don't know if they're going to solve any of Activision Blizzard's current problems. But Activision Blizzard, they do have reasons to celebrate, because Diablo 4 is great. We'll talk more about that in a second, but even amidst that celebration and that victory in which they're getting tons of great reviews, they have other big bombshells dropping, in which an Activision Blizzard employee apparently was fired for making fun of corporate greed. So this is something that he shared on social media. Let's see if I can properly put it to focus, but he said, "I wrote jokes lampooning generic corporate greed for a venture company, Loot Goblin, but then leadership walked face first into the joke after Stringlock. While my focus was getting the patch done, because of their embarrassment, I'm no longer at Blizzard." This company, man, they've changed their values over the years. And these are the jokes that he wrote that are actually were in Warcraft, and they were removed afterwards. The loot specialist saying, "All according to plan, another record quarter for revenue, finders keepers, I thought it was free for all." It's just basic stuff about corporate greed, but obviously Blizzard didn't like the joke because it was clearly being aimed at management. You know, big old Bobby Kotick, who's going to make $1 billion whenever this Activision Blizzard deal with Microsoft gets completed. And if it doesn't, I'm sure another company's going to swoop in and buy them out. Probably. There have been some rumors of Comcast jumping in. We'll see what happens with that. But regardless, it's just so dumb, and a lot of people, obviously developers, were very upset to find out this, and this is just the culture of Activision Blizzard. Blizzard especially is no longer the same. They're very inconsistent with their values. They're very inconsistent with their quality these days, which is why I was so nervous about Diablo 4 until I did play it. And then on top of that, it's just so weird. Blizzard was actually accused of making fake accounts for a Diablo 4 Q&A. And I think this was about a week ago, Future Game Show hosted a Q&A session with Diablo 4. The problem is that all the accounts, all the questions, didn't exist from real people. This was put together by this Twitter account. Blizzard and Future Games put out a Diablo 4 devs answer your questions Q&A. Surely this account asked this question. They point out this account hasn't tweeted in 13 years, and it continues. Another great question. Thanks for putting couch co-op in the game. I imagine this makes development significantly harder. Why was it so important? Well, the account, again, was just created the other day. And this goes on and on. The whole Q&A was faked, and it's so weird because they didn't need to do that, because Diablo 4 ended up being well received by everybody. It's just, Blizzard continues to shoot themselves in the foot. I don't understand it, but yes, Diablo 4 is a great game. It's my personal early Game of the Year winner. I absolutely love this game. And yes, 87 out of 100 on Metacritic for the PC version of the game. And they're celebrating because it's actually the fastest selling game ever for Blizzard. 93 million hours have been played during its 4-day early access period. And I know there was some concerns about the microtransactions and Battle Pass and all that. You can put all that crap to the side. I didn't even pay attention to it. The story is stupid. The prices are ridiculous, but there's enough cosmetic, enough content in the game that you can just ignore all of that nonsense. And that's what I did. If you'll see in some of the gameplay in the background, I played largely as Barbarian. I think I'm right around Paragon. I'm about to continue playing the end game, but I've loved my time with it. The story is solid. Lilith is a great villain. I feel like this is actually the first story with Diablo that I could actually get into and actually care about. I've never really cared for Diablo as a franchise. This is the first game that really grew on me. I love the customization options. There's all kinds of dungeons, all kinds of different types of bosses. The build potential is so huge with this. It makes me, right now, I just want to go play Diablo because of how fun it is. And it's funny because all of this continues to happen while Blizzard continues to shoot themselves in the foot with stupid things that they continue to do. But Diablo has grand plans. They're already talking about expansions, and I'm excited for that. I really do think Diablo 4 was a return to form for Blizzard. It's just the issue, this comes a couple weeks after the mess with Overwatch 2 and the promises that they gave for that game and then didn't deliver on. And that's the problem with modern day Blizzard. I don't know what we're going to get from them. This isn't the same Blizzard that was an award-winning developer 10 or so years ago, and nowadays it seems like we can still get some quality experiences, as Diablo 4 proves, but more often than not, we get horrible remasters and games like Overwatch 2, which really shouldn't have existed in the first place. But it is definitely nice to see that Diablo 4 was a pleasant surprise, and a game that I, right now, just want to continue investing tons of more hours into. And a longer video than usual, but definitely a lot to talk about within this AAA games industry, a lot happening, and probably a lot more to discuss in the coming days. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and comment below your thoughts on everything that is happening, and consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.